She had been told for 8 years that her body was finished, that the silence in her legs was permanent, that hope was dangerous, childish, irresponsible. So when a black mechanic in a grease-stained uniform grabbed her wheelchair and stopped her from falling, she expected nothing more than embarrassment. Instead, she felt something move, not in her heart, in her body. Fear hit her before hope ever could, because if what she felt was real, then it meant the doctors were wrong, and she had wasted 8 years believing them. It meant the system she trusted had failed her. And worse, it meant the one person who might be telling the truth was the man she had already judged, dismissed, and looked down on. Anger, shame, desperation, and a terrifying spark of hope collided inside her chest. Because if she stayed, if she listened, everything she believed about power, race, and control was about to shatter in a way she never saw coming. The first thing Eleanor Whitmore noticed when the wheelchair rolled into the garage was the smell. Burnt oil, metal, sweat. The kind of smell that clung to your clothes long after you left, the kind she had spent her entire life paying to avoid. She lifted her chin instinctively, as if distance could be created by posture alone. "This is temporary," she said sharply, not looking at anyone in particular. "I don't want to be here longer than necessary." Thomas Reed, her longtime driver, murmured an apology out of habit as he pushed her farther inside. The sign above the entrance read, "Monroe Auto Repair." Its letters faded from decades of sun and grease. The concrete floor was uneven. Tool sounds echoed like a language Eleanor had never bothered to learn. For 8 years since the riding accident that shattered her spine, Eleanor had perfected control. Control over schedules, control over people, control over how much of the world was allowed to touch her. Garages like this were not part of that world. "Just make sure no one touches the car unnecessarily," she added coldly. "And please, keep them away from me." Then a voice spoke. "Good afternoon, ma'am. How can we help you?" Eleanor looked up. The man walking toward her was tall, broad-shouldered, his blue work uniform darkened with grease. His hands were stained black from honest labor. His skin, dark brown, unmistakably black, caught the fluorescent light as he stopped a polite distance away. For a split second, something flickered across Eleanor's face. Surprise, discomfort, a judgment she didn't consciously name because she never had to. "You're the mechanic?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. I'm Caleb Monroe, owner." He offered a hand, then hesitated, glancing down at the oil on his palm, withdrawing it respectfully. Eleanor didn't miss the gesture. She didn't thank him for it either. "My Bentley has an electrical issue," she said, her tone clipped. "It needs to be checked immediately, and quickly." Caleb nodded, calm, observant. He had seen that look before, the one that sized him up before he ever spoke. "What symptoms are you noticing?" "I don't notice mechanical problems," Eleanor replied. "That's what employees are for." Thomas cleared his throat. "The dashboard lights flicker sometimes." Caleb listened, already walking toward the car. He moved with quiet confidence, plugging in a diagnostic device, his focus absolute. Eleanor watched him with open skepticism, a black mechanic, in charge, unbothered by her presence. That, more than the smell or the noise, irritated her. "So," she said after a moment, her voice sharp, "how long will this take?" Caleb studied the readings. "The body control module has an intermittent fault. It's not dangerous right now, but it needs replacement." "And?" Eleanor snapped. "The part is in stock locally. If I order it today, it should arrive in about a week." "A week?" Her voice rose. "That's unacceptable." "I understand your frustration," Caleb said evenly, "but the part comes from overseas." "I don't care where it comes from," she snapped. "Money is not an issue. Make it happen faster." Caleb straightened slowly and met her gaze. "Respectfully, ma'am, logistics don't respond to money or volume. The part arrives when it arrives." The air shifted. No one spoke to Eleanor Whitmore like that. "Do you have any idea who I am?" she demanded. "Yes," Caleb replied calmly. "You're Eleanor Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Pharmaceutical Group, one of the wealthiest women in Ohio." Her lips tightened. "And yet," he continued, his voice steady, "that doesn't change physics or delivery routes." Silence dropped heavy and sharp. "I could buy this building," Eleanor hissed. "I could shut this place down." "You could try," Caleb said, turning back to the car. but it won't fix your Bentley any faster. That was when Eleanor noticed the framed documents on the wall behind him. Diplomas, not certificates from trade schools, university seals, medical terminology, Latin phrases she recognized despite herself. "What are those?" she demanded. Caleb followed her gaze. "Old things." "From where?" "Another life." She hated that answer, hated not being in control. Then it happened. As Thomas turned the wheelchair too sharply to leave, one wheel caught the uneven floor. The chair tilted. Eleanor felt the sudden loss of balance, the sickening weight shift she had learned to fear. She screamed. Before anyone else reacted, Caleb moved. His hands were fast, precise. One arm stabilizing the chair, the other pressing firmly against her upper back. The movement was practiced, controlled, exact. The chair steadied. Eleanor froze. Because beneath the panic, beneath the shock, something else broke through. Sensation. Not pain, not imagination. Something real. Her breath caught. Caleb stepped back, ensuring the chair was secure. "Are you all right?" "What did you do?" she whispered. "I stopped you from falling." "No." Her voice shook. "How did you hold me?" He hesitated. "I used standard stabilization points," he said carefully. She grabbed his sleeve with surprising strength. "I felt something." Caleb met her eyes. For the first time, his calm cracked. Just slightly. "That's not possible," she said. "They told me it wasn't." He didn't answer immediately. "Who are you?" Eleanor asked, fear and hope colliding in her chest. Caleb exhaled slowly. "Someone who learned a long time ago," he said quietly, "that systems don't always see what's right in front of them." Then, without drama, without arrogance, he said the words that changed everything. "I believe your injury may not be as complete as you were told." Eleanor laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. "You?" she scoffed. "You think you know better than the best specialists in the country?" "I know what I felt," Caleb replied, "and I know what I've seen before." She stared at him, a black man in a grease-stained uniform, calm, certain, refusing to shrink. For the first time in years, Eleanor Whitmore felt something she couldn't buy, threaten, or dismiss. Uncertainty. And beneath it, hope. For the viewer, would you trust a black mechanic over a system that once told you, impossible? Yes or no? And be honest, have you ever judged someone's worth before hearing their story? Eleanor Whitmore didn't sleep that night. She lay awake in the guest room of her own estate, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment again and again. The tilt of the wheelchair, the sudden terror, and then something else. A flicker beneath the numbness she had lived with for 8 years. Sensation. Doctors had called it impossible, permanent, final. They had looked at her charts, at her scans, and spoken to her in the same calm, distant tone they used when a door was already closed. And yet, a black mechanic in a grease-stained uniform had stopped her from falling, and her body had responded. That thought alone made her angry. By morning, anger had hardened into resolve. She ordered Thomas to drive her back to Monroe Auto Repair. Caleb Monroe was already there when she arrived, sleeves rolled up, hands deep inside an engine. When he saw the familiar black Bentley pull in, he straightened slowly, wiping his hands on a rag. "I didn't ask for a second opinion," Eleanor said the moment he approached. "I'm not here to be convinced." "Then why are you here?" Caleb asked calmly. She hated that he didn't flinch, hated that he wasn't impressed. "I want you to explain," she said, "exactly what you think you felt." Caleb studied her for a long moment, then nodded toward a small office at the back of the garage. "Inside," he said. "This isn't a conversation for an audience." The office was modest, a desk, a bookshelf lined with medical textbooks, framed photos of patients, smiling, standing, walking. Eleanor's chest tightened. "You were a doctor," she said quietly. "Yes." "What kind?" "Neurosurgeon." The word hung heavy in the air. "Why are you here?" she demanded. "Why are you fixing cars instead of operating on people?" Caleb leaned against the desk, crossing his arms. "Because the hospital I worked for didn't believe a black surgeon who challenged their diagnosis protocols." Her jaw clenched. "They said I was overstepping," he continued. "Said I was reckless. Said I didn't know my place." "And you let them," she scoffed. I chose my patience over my pride, he replied. They revoked my license. I took care of my father. I kept helping people who were told there was no hope. Eleanor scoffed again, but weaker this time. And you expect me to trust you? I expect nothing, Caleb said. Trust isn't given, it's earned. She wheeled closer to the desk, her voice sharp. If you're wrong, you're giving false hope to a woman who has already lost everything. Caleb met her gaze. If I'm right, you've lost 8 years to people who never looked hard enough. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Eleanor said, "Prove it." That was how the first session began. Not in a hospital, not under bright lights or expensive machines, but in a converted room behind a garage where the walls smelled faintly of oil and antiseptic. The exercises were subtle, almost humiliating in their simplicity. Focus, Caleb said softly, not on moving, on feeling. She clenched her jaw as he guided her legs through controlled motions. Nothing happened. Minutes stretched into an hour. Sweat formed at her temples. "This is pointless," she snapped. "You're wasting my time." Then, a twitch, barely visible, barely there. Eleanor gasped. Caleb froze. Slowly, deliberately, he repeated the movement. There it was again. Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. "This doesn't mean anything," she whispered, as if saying it aloud would protect her. "It means something," Caleb replied gently. "Just not everything yet." Word spread quickly, not about her therapy, but about her presence. Neighbors drove by slower. People stared. A black man helping a white billionaire woman behind a garage. It didn't fit the story they wanted. Then the comments started. "She's being scammed. Why is she trusting him? Isn't that dangerous?" Caleb heard them all. He ignored them. Eleanor, however, did not. One afternoon, she arrived furious, her tablet shaking in her hand. "They're calling you a fraud," she snapped. "They're saying I'm desperate." Caleb nodded. "That's how it usually goes." "You don't care?" she asked sharply. "I care," he said. "I just don't let it stop me." The words struck her deeper than she expected. During the third week, progress accelerated. Eleanor could lift her leg, just slightly. Her breath caught every time. Pain came with it. Real pain, the kind she welcomed. One evening, as she struggled through an exercise, her voice broke. "They never looked at me like you do," she said suddenly. Caleb paused. "Like what?" "Like I'm not finished," he softened. "People stop looking when labels become easier than effort." She swallowed hard. "Is that how they looked at you?" "Yes." Everything changed the day Whitmore Pharmaceutical found out. Her CFO, Alan Whitford, confronted her in her office. "You're throwing money at a garage mechanic," he said incredulously. "A black one, no less. The board is concerned." Eleanor slammed her hand on the desk. "You will not say that again," Alan scoffed. "This is a liability. Public perception. I don't care," she snapped. "And if you sabotage this, I will personally dismantle your career." That night, she showed up unannounced at the garage, shaking. "They tried to stop me," she said. Caleb looked at her, truly seeing her fear for the first time. "Then we keep going," he said, quietly. The breakthrough came days later. Caleb secured Eleanor in parallel bars. Her hands trembled, her arms strained. "Stand," he said calmly. "I can't," she whispered. "Yes, you can." She pushed, her legs screamed, her vision blurred. Then, she was upright, not fully, not gracefully, but standing. Eleanor sobbed openly as Caleb steadied her. "I'm standing," she cried. "I'm standing." Caleb smiled, tears in his own eyes. "Yes, you are." But outside the garage, someone was watching, and the backlash was only beginning. The morning Eleanor Whitmore took her first step outside the parallel bars, the world didn't stop. Cars still passed, phones still rang, people still doubted. And yet, for Eleanor, it felt like the earth had shifted. She stood in the narrow therapy room behind Monroe Auto Repair, her hands trembling, her breath shallow. Caleb Monroe stood in front of her, not touching, not rushing, his eyes steady and calm. "Whenever you're ready," he said. Eleanor looked down at her legs. Legs she had been told were finished. Legs that had been spoken about like broken furniture. Something to accept, not question. She lifted her right foot. It shook violently. Pain surged. Fear followed immediately after. Then she placed it down. One step. She collapsed into tears before the second. Caleb caught her, not with force but with precision, with respect. "You did it," he said softly. "No," Eleanor whispered, gripping his arm. "We did." News traveled faster than either of them expected. A shaky video, someone filming from across the street, appeared online. Eleanor Whitmore standing. Not walking yet, not polished, but upright, human, vulnerable. The comments were brutal. Some called it fake. Some said she was desperate. Some attacked Caleb directly. A black man pretending to heal a billionaire? It was easier to believe in deception than in humility. The board of Whitmore Pharmaceutical moved quickly. They issued statements distancing the company from Eleanor's personal experiment. Alan Whitford called an emergency meeting, attempting to strip her of operational authority under the guise of concern. For the first time in years, Eleanor didn't intimidate her way through the room. She walked in, slowly, unevenly, supported by a cane. But she walked. The room fell silent. "You don't get to decide when I'm capable," she said, her voice steady despite the pain. "You decided that 8 years ago, and you were wrong." Alan stared, speechless. "You ignored my body because it was easier," she continued. "You ignored his expertise because of who he is." She looked around the room. "And if this company can't see the cost of that kind of blindness, then it doesn't deserve to exist as it is." Within weeks, Eleanor resigned as CEO. The media exploded. They called it a breakdown, a scandal, a fall from power. But Eleanor had never felt more grounded. She announced the creation of the Monroe Recovery Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to patients deemed non-recoverable by rigid systems. The foundation funded independent diagnostics, long-term rehabilitation, and, most controversially, practitioners who had been sidelined for challenging institutional norms, including Caleb. He resisted the spotlight at first. "I didn't do this for recognition," he told her one evening. "I know," Eleanor replied. "That's why it matters." The first public gala nearly broke her. She stood backstage, dressed simply, her cane beside her, listening to the murmurs beyond the curtain. "They say you're a miracle," a reporter's voice echoed faintly. Eleanor smiled bitterly. No. The miracle wasn't that she could walk. The miracle was that she had finally learned to see. When she took the stage, the room erupted in applause, then quieted as she raised her hand. "I was told my injury defined me," she began, "and I believed it. Not because it was true, but because the people in power said it was." She paused, then gestured toward Caleb, standing at the edge of the stage. This man was told the same thing, that he didn't belong, that his voice didn't matter, that his knowledge was inconvenient. She swallowed. "I believed them about him too, and that is the part I will regret for the rest of my life." Caleb looked down, uncomfortable, emotional. "I didn't walk again because of money," Eleanor continued. "I walked again because someone refused to see me as a lost cause, someone who had been treated like one himself." The room stood, not for her, for him. After the gala, letters poured in, from veterans, from mothers, from patients of color who had been dismissed, ignored, minimized, from people who saw themselves in Caleb Monroe. The foundation expanded, clinics opened, policies were challenged, and quietly, steadily, Eleanor kept walking. Some days with a cane, some days without, but always forward. One afternoon, months later, she returned to the garage. The sign was newly painted, but the smell remained the same. Caleb was under a hood when she walked in. "I wanted to thank you," she said. He smiled gently. "You already have." She shook her head. "No, for not becoming bitter." Caleb considered this. "I was angry," he admitted, "for a long time, but anger doesn't heal anyone." Eleanor nodded. "I was never angry enough." They stood in silence for a moment. "Do you think people will really change?" she asked. "Some will," he said. "Some won't. But someone watching might." That was enough, because the story was never about a billionaire walking again. It was about what happens when we finally listen to voices we were taught to ignore, and what we lose when we don't. Now for you, the viewer, How did this story make you feel? Hopeful, angry, inspired, or conflicted? Do you think Eleanor would have healed if she had never questioned her own bias? If this story moved you, comment on 11 below so we know you stayed until the end. Tell us, what country are you watching from? And if you believe stories like this matter, please share this video